This episode is brought to you by Studio Network Solutions. Media teams have enough things to worry about. Storage shouldn't be one of them. That's where Studio Network Solutions comes in. SNS makes your shared storage, media management, and cloud workflows easy so you can focus on what you do best: creating. See how SNS can help your team at studionetworksolutions.com.
Have you ever watched a production and thought, wow, that lighting is perfect, but then the host stares into the void like they forgot how to read? Yeah, that's because they didn't use iCan. See, iCan makes top-tier studio lighting, prompters, and gear that keep productions looking and running smooth. So whether you need buttery soft LED lights or rock-solid teleprompters so you don't forget your lines, or just pro-level gear that won't let you down, iCan has you covered. So if you want your production to look like $1 million without spending $1 million, check out iCan. Because great lighting and a good prompter can make anyone look like a pro.
3, 2, red, 1.
Welcome to Broadcast to Post, the podcast by trusted systems integrator Keycode Media. Now, we've been hosting this show since 2019, and it finally dawned on us. We've never made an episode about building a podcast. Until now. Over the past few years, Keycode Media's team has been busy helping clients launch and expand podcasts in all kinds of creative ways. The demand for podcast studios has been wide-ranging, and honestly, it's pretty eclectic. We've worked with production companies and building rental-ready podcast spaces within their facility. We've also worked with a university in Washington that transformed huddle rooms in its journalism school into multiple podcast studios, complete with PTZ multi-camera setups and a centralized control room for recording and live streaming. We've also helped churches, where pastors use podcasts to expand their reach and connect with their communities. Needless to say, podcasts are everywhere, but each one comes with its own requirements. Some demand high-end cameras and studio-quality microphones, while others just need a simple, low-maintenance setup that just works. At the end of the day, it all comes down to that classic triangle: good, fast, and cheap, and what are your team's core requirements. In this episode, we'll break down the key considerations that you need to think about before building your podcast studio. Plus, later in the show, we'll hear from our Emmy Award-winning friends at Kentucky Farm Bureau Insurance, who are using podcasting as the voice of the agriculture community in Kentucky. And dare we say they're planting the seed? We'll also be joined by the team at Dolby to explore the future of podcasting. They've been at the forefront of spatial audio, helping podcasters pivot to Dolby Atmos and deliver truly immersive listening experiences. If you're joining us live, drop your questions in the chat. Our guests will be back at the end for a live Q&A. But first, let's kick things off with our very own Mike Kavanaugh.
3, 2, red, 1.
Mike Kavanaugh sat down with our VP of Marketing, Matt McLean, to briefly talk about how hosting the Broadcast to Post podcast, yes, the podcast you're attending or watching right now, has transformed how we educate customers and have built long-lasting communities. As a quick side note, we were having prompter issues for this recording, hence why Mike is looking down at his questions. Okay, with that out of the way, let's load that clip.
Hi, Matt. Since this episode's all about podcasts, I thought it might be fun to turn the mic around on us. You're the VP of Marketing at Keycode, and you actually launched Broadcast to Post. Why do you do that?
Yeah, well, I think it really starts back to the days when we were starting YouTube strategies, right? Back in 2010, we were starting to release videos on products that we sell at our company. We started releasing guides on how to build a studio and topics like that. And we found just good indicators coming from that. Some of these videos got thousands of views. We were never really achieving what we wanted to on the subscriber level, though. That's kind of where Broadcast to Post kind of fit in. So we started Broadcast to Post in 2019. First, it was really simple, just me running technical director. We had a host and guests joining remotely over Zoom. It was scrappy, but it worked. And now here we are, 116 episodes later. We've able to grow over 5,000 subscribers on our channel, and we're building a community with the people who are watching this right now.
So at 116 episodes, that sounds pretty daunting. How does that really compare for us to produce a broadcast to post compared to other forms of marketing that we've been doing?
Yeah, so surprisingly little compared to other marketing channels. We spend about $10,000 a year on the podcasts, mostly light advertising for each episode on Reddit threads, on LinkedIn, and other platforms. And the reach we get from that is pretty huge. Our YouTube channel, as far as like subscribers, our channel went from over 100 subscribers to more than 1,000 subscribers each year. So we're also pulling in about 110,000 views annually. That translates to around 60,000 unique audience members per year. So if you think about it, that translates to around 60,000 unique audience members per year. It's basically the size of NAB attendees that are joining our YouTube channel on an annual basis. And we're doing it for less than a cost that it would be to book a 10 by 10 booth at that show.
That's pretty impressive. And from that perspective, how would you say that our broadcast to post podcast has really built community as well brand loyalty?
Yeah, the live stream is really key to that. So the live stream, basically, and it's kind of weird because the people are joining us right now. The live stream has become a real community experience. We typically see about 3,000 live attendees across the year, and it's usually in that chat. We're always having lively discussions on that topic, sometimes controversial, sometimes people just asking questions they need for an install they are doing that day. So people ask questions, they share experiences, and we make sure that to save time for Q&A, so it really feels interactive, like they're getting engaged with our guests, with our hosts. It's much more than just content. It's really relationship building.
So podcasts are a much different way where people are used to having trade show events, meet and greets, lunch and learn, etc. How do you feel comfortable with the podcast side of things, and how does that really rank up on its marketing effectiveness for Keycode Media?
Yeah, and I think that's where it gets really interesting. For us, a physical event, it costs between $60 to $180 per attendee. To acquire a new customer from a trade show, you're talking $2,000 to $4,000 that we're spending per new customer that comes into us. And as the cost of living is going up, food's more expensive, hotel ballrooms are more expensive, that is just going to keep going up. So for broadcast to post, that the cost per attendee is just $5. The cost of acquiring a new customer through the podcast, about $200. That's a massive difference. To put it simply, for every dollar we spend on a trade show, we generate about $28 in new customers. But for every $1 we spend on the podcast, we generate $10,000 in new customers coming to us. So it's really a game changer as we just monthly hit these core topics, remind people that we can help build their TV studios, their podcast studios, their sports stadiums, and just keep that mental deposit that we're here for them and try to provide value for them in that moment they join these sessions or watch later on YouTube.
So pretty much from your perspective, podcasts scale in a way trade shows can't, where we're still getting reoccurring viewership from podcasts that may have happened a year or two ago. How would you sort of stack that up against the trade show budgets?
Exactly. And with trade show attendance declining and costs rising, digital events like podcasts and live streams are where our industry is heading. Busy professionals, they don't always have time to travel these days. They can't get a budget approved to travel from their manager, but they can check in, participate online for as long as they want, and catch the replay later if they get double booked on a meeting. It keeps us top of mind in ways that's cost effective and sustainable.
Awesome. And I'd say from our perspective, and thanks for everybody for attending and listening so far today, we really wanted to share and more than happy to talk a lot more in depth about the conceptual disruptive opportunities for your organization to bring in podcast into your studio. I can say also when we first started doing this, we really started saying we sell video equipment, let's really eat our own dog food, but it's really become quite a growth factor for our business, helping us really reach out to more clients and get them very comfortable with us in a format that is not intimidating for them as per, say, going to a trade show or having to directly call up a sales rep for a meeting. Thank you.
3, 2, red, 1.
Launching a podcast can be as simple as recording on your laptop. But if you want professional sound, video, and a workflow that grows with your show, then a dedicated studio makes all the difference. But before you buy your first microphone or camera, it's worth asking some key questions. Now, as a systems integrator, we here at KeyCode Media use these questions to guide our clients towards the right solution for their goals and budget. So question number 1 is, how many people are going to be rocking the mic? If it's just you, then the setup is simple. But the second you add co-hosts or in-studio guests, you'll need more microphones, headphone outputs, seating, and a bigger audio interface or mixer. So think ahead. Are you building for solo episodes or me plus 3? Number 2 is, what kind of room do you have? The space matters almost as much as the gear. Untreated rooms lead to echo and reverb that listeners will notice. So ask yourself, is this a dedicated room or a shared space? Is it quiet enough, or will HVAC and street noise be a problem? Do you need acoustic panels or even full sound isolation? So consideration number 3, what types of microphones make sense? Dynamic mics are forgiving and they're great in noisy rooms. Condenser mics capture more detail, but they'll also pick up every click and hum. So decide if you want that radio broadcaster sound or studio-grade clarity. And don't forget accessories like boom arms and pop filters. Number 4, will guests join in person, remotely, or both? In-person setups are pretty straightforward, but remote guests mean you'll need conferencing software and echo cancellation and maybe even mix-minus setups so they don't hear themselves delayed. If video is part of the show, then think about how you'll display remote participants on screen. Number 5, do you need a producer station? Some shows are run solo. Others have a producer in the background monitoring levels, switching cameras, or pulling in graphics. So decide if you'll self-produce or need a separate control room with a window into the studio. Consideration number 6, will you add video? Video podcasts are exploding on YouTube, LinkedIn, and live streams. A single static camera works, but multicam setups with lighting, switching, and graphics bring the show to another level. Now, it's more work, but it can grow your audience significantly. Consideration number 7, will you share slides or videos or demos? If you plan to show presentations or product demos, you'll need HDMI capture, switching, and possibly picture-in-picture layouts. This is especially important if your podcast doubles as a webinar or training tool. And finally, question number 8, what's your growth plan? Now, you don't need everything on day 1. Maybe you start with 2 mics and then expand to 4, or begin with audio only, but leave room to add cameras down the road. Think about where you want your show to be a year from now, and design with that in mind. Now, answering these questions up front can save you from truly expensive mistakes, and make sure your studio truly fits your vision. And that's where we come in. At KeyCode Media, we've designed podcast spaces for universities, production companies, churches, and businesses of every size. So whether you're starting simple or building a full video studio, our team helps with equipment, installation, and training, so you can stay focused on the content. And to make that easier, we've created our podcast starter bundles. Our audio-only bundle is built for 2 to 4 hosts with broadcast-quality mics, mixers, and monitoring. It's perfect for audio-first shows or remote interviews, and it starts around $1,200 up to about $4,500. If you step up to the basic camera bundle, you get everything from the audio package plus simple 2 static camera video and basic lighting. This is great for polished YouTube or LinkedIn shows. Typically, this is around $6,500 up to about $15,000. And for teams that want full automation, multi-camera angles, pro lighting, and live streaming, our PTZ Pro Studio Bundle delivers the complete experience from about $25,000 and up. Now, your next step is to complete the key considerations we covered today and then reach out for a free consultation. Our engineers will map out the products you need, tailored to your budget requirements, and guide you through the best path forward. Contact KeyCode Media today and learn more about our podcast starter bundles and start building your perfect studio.
3, 2, red.
Recently, the Key Code team partnered with Kentucky Farm Bureau Insurance to design, install, and support a state-of-the-art production facility in Louisville. This Emmy award-winning studio now supports everything from corporate messaging and commercials to live broadcasts and podcasts, all built for storytelling around the Kentucky's agricultural community. Joining me today are two key voices from KFB Studios, Matthew Hilton, manager and podcast host, who brings the business and creative perspective, and Austin Anderson, live production supervisor and the technical lead who keeps the systems running smoothly. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Appreciate it for having us.
Thank you. Matthew, let's start with you. How did the Let's Get Rural podcast come about? Was it tied to a new studio project, or was it developed separately, or how did it come about?
Yeah, so we really, from the start of the design of our studio space, a podcast was definitely something we wanted to explore. We have, in the past, in our communications at Farm Bureau, we've had radio programs that were just taken from the radio and put on a podcast platform. It wasn't really a podcast as we know them today. So we really wanted that to be a part of something that we were doing. A lot of the things when we built the entire studio facility were just ideas more than concrete productions we were going to do. We knew we do a lot of conversations at Farm Bureau. We do a lot of internal trainings for folks. And with those conversations, why not have a podcast? So why not have people come in and talk about their lives in agriculture and farming, and use this space for other things like voiceover work and those kinds of things. So we knew we needed a soundproof location, some good audio mics, up to 3 or 4 people can be on at one time. And so that's really as much as we knew when we started buying equipment and working with Key Code on trying to find the right answer to all that. So, and then from there on, we knew it was probably going to be agriculture based. Farm bureaus are interesting. All farm bureaus throughout the country are agriculture organizations, kind of the voice of agriculture in each state, and we're no different in Kentucky.
Well, obviously, when a company starts a podcast, there's obviously a business use case, but more often than not, the ones that I find that succeed have community goals, right? They're actually tied into the community. It's not just something to make money off of. So I'd love to hear more what your kind of business and goals were for the community that you were hoping to achieve with the podcast.
Yeah, I think, the Farm Bureau from the agriculture side is really gathering and having conversation about issues that are dealing with farmer business issues. So we have lobbyists on staff that work for the Kentucky Farm Bureau Federation, which is that agriculture side. So really, like, at the heart of what the organization has been for over 100 years, it has been bringing these farmers who live lots of times acres and miles away from each other together to talk about issues that they're dealing on their farm. So that was a lot of it. It's not really, that's what the Federation is. It's a vehicle to bring those farmers together. They have young farmer programs, women farmer programs, middle-aged farmer programs, frankly. They have lots of different programs to bring these farmers together to kind of compare issues that each are having on their farms and then try to find solutions to fix that. So a podcast talking about those kinds of things was really important, I think, as a communicator here at Farm Bureau to do. The other thing is just celebrating rural life. The podcast that we do is called Let's Get Rural, as in kind of like Let's Get Real. And it's with me and a young lady named Renee Carrico. Renee is an actual Aggie. She grew up on a farm. She works for the Federation side. And I'm just the video guy that came to Farm Bureau 20-something years ago. And almost became like an adopted Aggie at that.
I think, Austin, maybe we should ask you a few questions because you were the technical point person for the studio. I know this could be a very long answer, but can you kind of walk us through some of the big decisions, the microphones, the acoustics, how you were recording, and then delivery? What was kind of your process in deciding what tech you should be using and what direction to go?
All right. Well, I really think, Key Code had a huge hand in that, and we were able to work with some really talented guys to really guide us through that. Cause, I come from a video background as well, all video production and, a lot of run and gun kind of documentary style shooting a lot of the times. And And with that comes, really just, hey, where can we stick a mic and how can we grab audio the best way we can? We do appreciate audio, and I've learned to appreciate it over the years, just what goes into really the audio engineering side of things, crafting it and making a soundscape full of sound effects and good music and dialogue that all blends together well. But, my experience with it from like the crafting side of it and the post-production side really just pretty much didn't exist outside of just doing stuff out of Premiere Pro or, Final Cut and things like that back in the day. And so Pro Tools and all that was really new to me. Now, setting up all these microphones and everything, it's you can go into it and kind of get how a mic plugs in and everything, but just knowing, how to create the best sound, and then how to get that into a system to mix it. This is the first time. This has just been a huge growth moment for me, really, with this whole build, and I learned so much, down to, the video side of it in the video studio, and then building out these control rooms. And then this podcast studio, we knew we wanted, like Matt said, we knew we wanted one, and we knew we wanted just, kind of 4 mics to hang out, but learning, how things like Dante can tie everything together, how it needs to flow where I can talk to them in the middle of the show, but, I can talk to our host, but maybe not the guest, and just kind of give them like, hey, you got, we've been doing this for 30 minutes, kind of give them some time, or say, hey, you might need to sit a little closer to the mic, I can hear an echo or something like that. Learning how to do that, and then learning how to bring it all into Pro Tools. We use Pro Tools to edit all this together. Actually took a class through KeyCode on Pro Tools.
KeyCode Education.
Yes, KeyCode Education.
I'll say this. So there's 3 of us. All right. I'm the talker, Michael's the shooter, and Austin's the smart one. So that's really how this is how this happened. So we had to help build this thing, and someone had to, of the 3 of us, process what KeyCode was saying. We need someone here at Farm Bureau that kind of understood. We had some help with our IT department here as well, but really it was a lot about Austin and his willingness to be wrong, learn, and go research something real quick to at least not sound like an idiot, and then growing like all this stuff. He keeps this whole studio rolling. Today he did a setup so we can do this because we don't have cameras in this podcast thing. So I will say he's done a great job of keeping us going, and allowing the creativity just to flow when stuff just works. And that's a really credit to him. It's credit to KeyCode and their support. So,
well, thank you.
Yep.
I will say more often than not, when KeyCode goes in to design any facility, whether it be a podcast studio or an edit bay or master control, there's always some lines in the sand, the technology that we have to use or things that have to be accomplished. Were there any kind of like, no, I like AKG mics, we want to use AKG mics, or no, we're a Shure house, we prefer Shure? Was there any lines in the sand like build around this, make sure we use this kind of tech?
Yeah, we already had these RE20 mics, so we kind of just wanted to hang on to those. We have some Shure mics with it as well. I've noticed they need a little bit more preamp behind them to get going, so we kind of just use these, and then but everything else was just so new that we really didn't have any footing to say as far as the audio side. We need this because we use this. It was we were using Rode mics and wireless Rode mics for our field cameras. We were very much a field team to start with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so
sitting still and doing your work you're not used to that. You're used to having it on your shoulder and doing the run and gun kind of thing.
Yeah. It was a lot of it. And, I've kind of taken on more so being at the office and doing the studio stuff. On the video side, there was definitely, we wanted our Canon C300 field cameras to stay in the studio. We really liked a cinematic look on video rather than a studio camera.
And I think that plays into something else I kind of wanted to touch on, is that, the trends that we've been seeing over the past several years, decades, has been less people to do more work. So not requiring a football team's worth of folks to run a podcast. So I imagine that there were some discussions on what kind of crew would you need to run the entire facility to do a podcast? Would you need baker's dozen? Could you do it with just 3 people? Were there kind of things that were adjusted so you could run this with a kind of a skeleton crew?
I'd say so. I mean, I'm not sure about on the podcast side. The production side of it is pretty simple. So we didn't really go into this thinking like, oh man, we're really going to be short on that podcast. I think we probably went into it more being we're going to be short on the video side.
Yeah.
But the podcast really kind of fell in place, and we always knew we wanted to do it. And I guess the struggle with doing a podcast more than anything is the producing of it, finding people, keeping it regular, keeping just good content that keeps flowing week to week. Production side of it, creating a podcast, it's not, I don't want to say it's easy, but it's not too terribly hard, especially if you don't do video.
Yeah, I think video is something that is a part of podcast now. It's something that, we talk about evolving in any way. That could be a way we do it. A lot of our guests are farmers, and it's in the middle of harvest, them leaving, driving 4 hours to come here on a good day when they could be doing harvest. It's pretty hard. So the video element, there's a lot to why we decided audio only, not just from a technical standpoint, being maybe unable to do it, but it really is, it's these folks, can they even come here at all to start with?
Podcast listeners and viewers only see what the finished product is, right?
Yeah.
So maybe you can walk folks through what does a typical podcast production look like, both from a technical level, which hopefully is kind of set it and forget it to some extent, but also the creative portion of that. What does a typical podcast production look like?
Yeah, so Renee and I really pick out the guests. Within our experience her experience in agriculture and my years of experience at Farm Bureau, knowing farmers, we really work together to kind of think of topics that we want to talk about, issues that are going on, things that are going on in rural communities in Kentucky, and then we try to lean into that and find guests that do that. One joke that we do is like, all right, we'll pick a person and it's like, are they fun? Can they, sure, they're maybe perfect and they got all the check marks, but are they fun? Will they come in and just have a laid back, fun conversation? So that's really it. We do a little bit of editorial meeting between me and her. We pick some folks and then I'm really, I would say, the producer of it. Her job is she's the commodity division director for the Federation. So she's not a podcaster. We just found a lady that can talk and talk and talk and knows everything about agriculture. So she's a perfect person to do this, and loads of personality. Where I've had experience scheduling and calling folks and producing videos and now podcasts. So I really take it from there. We usually get, for this audiogram, we get a headshot from them and, those kinds of things. And I try to encourage them to come here in our nice little podcast room because it is better. This is just more engaging when you have someone live right here. But we just try to work with what they can give us as a guest, and the technology allows us to have them just call in, working even through some of our security. We are an insurance company, so there's some security to how we operate.
And I don't want to gloss over that at all, because as you pointed out, you're working with folks who talking into a microphone isn't their first profession, right?
Right.
So are there some tricks, or are there some things that you've done to prep content to keep the show engaging for folks who don't make a living talking on a microphone day to day?
Yeah. We coach them when they come in. Matt actually coaches them where we kind of tell them to, get comfortable, move the mic, find your comfortable position first, then move the mic to you. We'll put the headphones on. We'll let them just sit in here and chat for a little bit. I think both Renee and Matt do a good job of just loosening them up and just talking to begin with. And I'm not even rolling yet. So we do a lot to get them, bring them water and all that good stuff. We do have at the beginning of the show, we have, I guess for the first few podcasts we did, I noticed that it became a lot of just the guest speaking for a long time. And then, Matt or Renee would kind of pop in with a question, but then it was just a majority of the guest kind of owned the show and trying to create that banter back and forth. So I think that has developed a lot more, where there's a lot more banter now going forward.
But yeah, I think talking to the folks is the biggest thing. I get on the phone before them too, and kind of just tell them, the more you just kind of fall into the conversation, the better you're actually going to do. And you let us worry about you saying something you shouldn't say.
What I absolutely love is that when I asked that question, the first thing you came back to me with was people will stop me and say, remember when you said this, this, and this? And I think that is what kind of is the heartwarming part, right? That's where that fills your soul, that gives you that passion to keep doing this. And you led with that instead of, well, our metrics say this, this, and this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I love the fact you led with that. But I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up, what is some of the feedback or results and kind of a more tangible metrics? Have you seen a huge increase in engagement? Have you seen more folks proactively reaching out and wanting to work with you? What have you kind of seen on that end?
Our numbers our community's small, so we're targeting a community that's not real large in the first place. Our numbers are modest because of that, probably. But we hear from the right people. I think that's a big thing, and we talk to people throughout the state. I think a big part of doing a podcast too is trying to hit a different demographic. If you go to a lot of Farm Bureau events, it's an older demographic that's actually at the Farm Bureau events, and I think they're always searching for ways to engage younger farmers, teenage farmers even.
The American Farm Bureau has a conference every year and changes in a different city, and it's all the farm bureaus throughout the country get together. So we decided to kind of take the podcast on the road for that, and we went and we interviewed some people that we knew we could only get in person throughout the country at that conference. So that was a cool moment, and I think we're going to try to expand on that every year, where maybe we're just out and seeing more. Like, we kind of did it in a closed room. Hey, come in here, and we'll record this podcast. But we even thought, like, what if we just did it out, in the middle of the show floor somewhere, or somewhere off in the lobby where everyone can see us walking by, and kind of promote it that way.
Yeah, you got to look at your comparable podcasts. You got to look at other farm bureaus, for instance, as a good one we go to immediately and see what are they doing and what are their numbers and how are we doing from there.
So hindsight's 2020, and obviously this was a long process to get the podcast going and get all the bugs worked out and make sure it's a smooth operating machine. What would you share with folks who are just looking to have their own podcast and build their own podcast studio? What do you wish you knew then that you could share with folks now?
I think trying to promote it, trying everything you can, and understanding the slow burn element of it, that it does take a little bit of time. I think having people want to listen to podcasts where they feel like they're sitting there having a good time with the conversation as well. If it's a conversation podcast, I think we would probably not be so Q&A about it. I think that's from a creative standpoint of how we do it. We would interject more, and I think people listen to the podcast more than we probably realize for Renee and I. So the things we've been doing where they're getting to know us by being, that's what they're coming back for, and hopefully maybe that particular one they're listening a little more because they know who the guest is. But we have to understand that, like, you listen to Joe Rogan, a lot of times we're Joe Rogan, not to, again, the zero to Joe Rogan, but a lot of those guests are important, and they definitely make maybe a little pop in listenership on one podcast or another. But leaning into your host a little bit. I think also when we started, we had a lot of different types of audio, and we were trying maybe a little too much. I think we're simplifying a little bit too, where people are getting what analytically people were listening to the most when we were posting podcasts. We've refined it down to doing more of that and less of the other things. So, I don't really hate that process. I wouldn't say that was a bad process, because it It could have been one of the other things we were doing. I think sometimes you just got to try things and see what sticks in this particular. But I think the biggest recommendation is start. You don't have to have all your ducks in a row. Technology-wise, it's nice when everything works and you're not just fighting that all the time. So maybe definitely make sure your tech's in the right spot so that you can just have a free conversation. If right in the middle, every time we were having a conversation, we have to stop because something is messed up or, it kind of you lose some flow and those kind of things. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I said a lot of things. But I think just do it. I think you'll get better at it.
Well, gentlemen, if you could stick with us for a few more minutes, we're going to do some question and answer. Normally, we have a lot of questions coming in, and I'm sure they're going to want to pull even more nuggets of information out of your brain. So can you stick around with us for a few minutes?
You bet.
Yeah.
Excellent.
3, 2, red, 1.
We're diving into something that's generating a lot of buzz, immersive podcasting with Dolby Atmos. Now, let's address the elephant in the room first. Dolby Atmos podcasts aren't natively supported today on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, the two biggest podcasting platforms. But if history is any guide, it's only going to be a matter of time. Think about when YouTubers started shooting in 4K and HDR before YouTube supported it. Those creators were ready on day one when the features dropped, and it paid off. The same opportunity exists right now for podcasters with immersive audio. Joining me today are two people on the front lines of this shift. From Dolby Laboratories, we have Tom McAndrew, Senior Technical Manager of Content Relations, and from Follow Happy Productions, we have CJ Drummiller, Head of Sound and owner, who's already putting immersive podcasting into practice. Thanks for joining us today, gentlemen. I greatly appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
All right, so let's start with the big picture for those who are uninitiated. For people who might only know Atmos from cinema, what does immersive audio mean in the podcasting world, and what's Dolby's vision for how this changes the way podcasts are made and experienced?
So, whenever I set up a conversation about podcasting with Dolby Atmos, I kind of get a look from some people about, well, why? Podcasting is two drunk guys sitting in a garage sharing one microphone, right? But, there's a lot of podcast genres that are really low-hanging fruit for just really impacting the experience by adding immersive audio. So think about narrative fiction and true crime and sleep and meditation and documentary content. Lots of podcast content is, ready-made for immersive audio. And honestly, podcasting has been using 20-year-old technology, stereo MP3. And so Dolby really sees this as an opportunity to raise the bar. Atmos started in the cinema, then went to streaming originals, live sports, music, etc. Podcasting is kind of the next frontier, and we're really excited about the growth that we've had so far.
Thank you for breaking that down for us, Tom. I appreciate it. Now, CJ, you're already producing podcasts in Atmos. Can you share how you're using immersive audio for these podcasts? Does it work for certain genres, like Tom mentioned, storytelling or fiction, or can it enhance just about any type of podcast?
Yeah, I think the first, leaning into the narrative and the fiction, the sound design aspects of what we can do with that, with the immersive, is now something that's able to really trigger the imagination in ways we haven't been able to do that before, especially with the idea of binaural rendering and the idea of really being in the room. The nice thing now is what we're seeing also is kind of a, almost what it would be a talking head, but also able to add little splashes of, design and things that are really, I would say, increasing the, attention span of what would maybe just be a dialogue show. Now we're able to add little subtle hints and then maybe even some storytelling to where we really can dive into the immersive side of the imagination and kind of inspiring some of those visions, even if it's an audio only format, which is kind of my passion, is where, we're leading with audio. Now it's just a matter of, painting those pictures in a deeper way than what we've been able to do before.
I would also add that, we don't want to pigeonhole Dolby Atmos for podcasting into strictly storytelling. We're talking to talk podcasters about, look, there are titles on Netflix, for example, where it's, say, a talkie movie, but they still create it in Dolby Atmos. And there are subtle things you can do in the body in the show, but just right from the ta-dum at the top of the show, we're kind of communicating the message that you're hearing something special. So even a talk podcast that's largely in the front of the room, there's a lot you can do with theme songs and bumpers and maybe roll-in clips, things like that. It doesn't have to be wall-to-wall things flying around behind you. Dolby Atmos just gives you more possibilities for talk as well as other genres.
Thank you for clarifying that, because I think often people jump to that conclusion and kind of clarifying that it can be used for more talking heads, for lack of a better term, content. I think will answer a lot of questions. The first question we normally get asked when we talk about new technology is what are the metrics, right? And so what I wanted to ask both of you, both from a word on the street as well as tangible metrics, is what are you both seeing in terms of results? Are you seeing retention being longer, or listeners sticking around longer? Are they engaging differently, maybe going on social media and discussing it? Or is it still kind of too early for hard data? And even anecdotes would be great here.
So we have over 10 podcast streaming services all around the world, podcast and audiobook, that are already using Dolby Atmos today. The biggest example is Audible, primarily audiobooks. They've also folded in some other content from Wondery, as part of the same family. From some of our partners, I can't say, I can't share their research myself, but yeah, they are absolutely seeing that there's much more listener retention with an immersive experience versus a stereo experience. So I know that's a squishy answer, but the short version is yes.
And CJ, have you been getting feedback, word on the street from people who are talking about the immersive podcast and how interested they are?
Yeah, I think the amazing thing is really when you get the chance to go and sit in a room and just sit and listen to the immersion, and just to watch the face and watch someone for the first time come in and sit down and listen in Atmos, especially in a room. It's just pure joy. I guess pure joy to, especially as a sound designer, as a mixer, to be able to express your story in a way that connects on a deep level, like it does when you're able to listen to this, and not just in a room, but also the head tracking that you can do, even with headphone presentation, the down mix of the binaural, and being able to perceive like height and depth, and now stuff that's maybe from behind us walking up. It's just a total playground for someone that loves sound design and be able to tell stories in this way. And so it's just really a new world. And I guess it's not new. We've been around for a while now, and it's a technology that's constantly advancing and getting easier and easier. So it's just I would say overwhelmingly positive on the reviews. Yeah.
And also what we've heard from mixers is that, it is a bigger paint box, and you don't have, with audio only entertainment, you don't have the tyranny of the screen. You have to put the sounds as they relate to the screen effects. One true crime podcast mixer I talked to, John Bowen, he was one of the early guard that started in Dolby Atmos early, along with CJ. He gave a great example of, when you're doing true crime, okay, there's the scene where the host is interviewing the police detective and you're kind of in the audience and that's in front of you. But then you switch to a recreation of the murder or what have you. Now you're the protagonist, you're the victim, and things are happening all around. So you can define the audio vocabulary, not just for a whole show, but even scene by scene. And again, it's deeper immersion into the storytelling.
Then let's get into the nuts and bolts of this. I mean, that's kind of what I like to roll around in, right? So Tom, why don't we start with you? If someone wants to try producing an Atmos, what do they need? Why don't we start with the bare bones? What's needed on your journey?
So the first thing I want to say is we're not trying to sell you stuff. We do have our Dolby Atmos renderer application that we will sell you. However, we're thrilled by the fact that DAWs that are Dolby Atmos capable have now integrated native rendering, so you don't need a Dolby product at all. So Pro Tools and Apple Logic Pro and DaVinci Resolve and Nuendo and Cubase and Persona Studio One, we're getting more and more DAW platforms that are Dolby Atmos capable. And right in the DAW itself, again, you don't need the Dolby application if you don't want to use it. So in terms of mixed rooms, and CJ can actually speak to this because he totally rolled his own and did an amazing job of it. But, with sound for picture, like if you're delivering to a Netflix or a Disney Plus, there's a requirement that you have to have a minimum 7.1.4 room configuration. So that's left, center, right, pair of sides, pair of rears, and then 4 overhead speakers, basically in a box around the listening position. We know budgetarily that's not practical for a lot of podcasters. So that type of setup is recommended, at least for playback pass, maybe even in consumer style listening space versus a professional. But lots of podcasts have been mixed in Dolby Atmos on headphones. The binaural output rendering in the professional tools allows for that, and it translates to speakers very, very well.
And CJ, that brings up a great point that maybe CJ you can address, is that when we're taking existing facilities or facilities maybe that have just been deployed recently but don't have the immersive component to it, are we looking at upgrading microphones? Tom already talked about speakers, but are there microphones that make this easier, or can we use legacy microphones? What are some of the things that you put into place when you rolled your own?
So the beautiful thing about it is you don't necessarily have to change any source of your sound. There are flashy, nice, cool things that are out there that can record directly into this, format. But the beautiful thing is you're really looking at using mono-sourced objects or mono-sourced tracks that you can then place in a 3D, space. And so with what Tom was talking about, yes, it's awesome to have a room. But the beautiful thing about what this tech does is it's a scalable thing. So when you can start where you're at right now with, even if you're only mixing on a 2.0 or just headphones or binaural rendering, the beautiful thing about, and people get kind of caught up on the number of speakers or whether it's a 9.1, like how many magnets do we need in this space, right? So what the cool thing is though, is if you stop thinking about the number of speakers and just start to think about a 3D cube space. Once you have that space set up to where at least even if it's in your brain, that I have this 3D space where I can now take that mono object and place it anywhere in that space. And if I have this configured correctly, that will scale up from the smallest Atmos room to the biggest theater. As long as you have that one ADM or that master file, your location of that audio will now preserve, no matter where that story is told. So the beautiful thing is the scalability. So when I started, I had to jump in super fast. I started in with headphones and just started, and then I started with a 5.1.2. I had two, and just set up objects to where I knew I'm operating in a 3D space where those things will now transfer. So now that I have, the full rig, I can go back and forth to where I know that those 3D elements are going to translate.
So during the onset, I mentioned Apple and Spotify and the fact that they don't support Atmos yet. So when, not if, it comes to the platform, how should podcasters think about future-proofing their content today so they're ready to stand out when immersive podcasts go mainstream?
Yeah, so the future-proofing of trying to get into where you're ready for Atmos when you're ready to make that jump is really about the isolation of those channels. So if you've got, multiple people talking, you're going to want to keep those, on a separate channel just in case you want to spread things out. So anything that ends up on the same channel is going to be a little tougher to spread out. You can pan it and post if you want to, but I would say as much individual tracks, the ISO tracks as you can preserve. That way you have the freedom to, move things out around as much as you'd like.
And one thing I would say about deliverables is that, Dolby Atmos in our mind is always the hero mix because you can easily and automatically derive a stereo output from that. Literally, once you have your Atmos mezzanine file, you click re-render to stereo and go get a cup of coffee. The Atmos tools give you the opportunity to also create a binaural output. Binaural is great for professional monitoring when you don't have a speaker-based environment, but I would say we strongly recommend not releasing actually to consumers in binaural, because the thing is, and by the way, binaural refers to a headphone experience where it still sounds immersive. It still sounds like you have things in front of you, behind you, above you. It's phase and delay and EQ trickery that makes two channels actually sound like a full sound field. But only on headphones. Again, binaural sounds awesome on headphones, but it only sounds awesome on headphones. And a lot of people do listen to podcasts on headphones, but just as many people also listen on smart speakers and laptops and tablets and cars, actually. So there's about 20 auto OEMs now that actually have Dolby Atmos in cars today. And so we're super excited about that. To me, that's where I listen to all my podcasts. It just helps the miles go by. But binaural, again, it's great on headphones, but it kind of breaks on speakers. So if you're listening, for example, in a car or a living room, it's not going to be a great experience. So, for now, for non-Atmos capable ecosystems, I'd say, hey, just release in straight stereo. But, absolutely create in Dolby Atmos for when more platforms light up.
Well, gentlemen, this has been a fantastic look into the next era of podcasting. Obviously, immersive audio just isn't about the surround sound. It's about telling listeners or pulling listeners deeper into the story. And then as creatives, CJ, it makes what you do even more interesting because now you're able to tell a story in a completely different way that historically hasn't always been there. So now we're going to be transitioning to our live Q&A, which both of you are going to join. So let's get your questions ready and ask away. This episode is brought to you by Ross Video. From video switchers, graphics, and routing, whether SDI, IP, or even in the cloud, Ross makes live production easy. Trusted everywhere from the biggest sports stadiums to city council meetings, newsrooms, and more. Are you ready to upgrade your workflow? Keycode Media offers the best Ross video pricing and a free consultation, so you get the right products the first time. Trust the experts at Keycode Media and book today at keycodemedia.com. This episode is brought to you by Avid Technology, the industry standard for storytellers. Hollywood editors, chart-topping musicians, and newsrooms rely on Avid. From Media Composer to Pro Tools, shared storage to newsroom tools, Avid keeps productions moving. Keycode Media delivers the most competitive Avid pricing, plus a free consultation to ensure your workflow is built right the first time. Count on the trusted team at Keycode Media. Book today at keycodemedia.com. Thank you, everyone, for sticking around for the podcast. It looks like our retention rate is pretty good for this podcast. We also have some friends on the line that you probably saw during the podcast, and that includes Matthew and Austin from KFB Insurance. We also have, you can wave, that's all good. We also have CJ and Tom, which spoke about immersive audio. So everyone, thanks for being with us. We've got a lot of questions and they cover a lot of ground. So I'm just going to kick them off, and if I can answer them because they pertain to Keycode, I will. Otherwise, I open it up to the floor. So the first question is from Jen K. Jen, thanks for the great comments in chat. We appreciate it. And your question was that you'd love to know if this setup would work in a teaching environment like a university. And I presume you're referring to the setup we did at Kentucky Farm Bureau. So before I chime in, Matt and Austin, what do you think about that, about the setup that was built for you? Do you think that would translate to an educational facility?
Yeah, I think it would translate. I mean, it depends on what you're trying to get your students to participate in, but you could probably do something even a little simpler to get a podcast started. It doesn't take a whole lot of equipment, but just a decent mic and a mixer. It's a way to record it. Even something like the little handy recorders. There used to be an H4n, now there's like the H6, I believe. Or a little podcast mixer could work. But yeah, I guess it just depends on use case for podcasts. But I know a lot of students, stories that we've done on students that have their own podcasts and kind of find something to focus in on and talk about. And they're usually able to hit the ground running pretty quick. So.
Jen, one of the things you may want to look at is Keycode actually have deployed many podcasts for many different educational facilities, but one of the ones we touched on briefly at the beginning of the episode was for Washington State University. The Washington State School of Journalism, which we showed pictures of at the onset. And we actually retrofitted existing meeting rooms with PTZ cameras and microphones. And then there's a main control room, and they can stream or record from that room at any point. And this really gives journalism majors a way to kind of tackle this new world order. So if you'd like to, reach on out and we can send you that case study, or it may even be on our website. So
I'd also add
go ahead. No,
I was
go
just
ahead,
going to
Tom.
add for Dolby Atmos education, the Dolby Creator Lab is really heavily engaged with universities around the country and actually around the world, developing Atmos educational curricula and setup guides for mix rooms and how to get students through the process efficiently. Most students can work just on laptops with a DAW and again a binaural output, and then maybe there's one mix room that the students can cycle through on their own schedule. But yeah, Atmos education is galloping ahead at universities.
And if I'm not mistaken, we can find that on the Dolby website. Is it academy.dolby, or do you recall what the address
It's
is?
the Dolby Creator Lab. So I
Okay.
forget the exact URL, but also at learning.dolby.com, there's a whole wealth of resources there, including a full soup to nuts training curriculum that you can go through at your own pace, including downloadable sample session content that you can play with.
Oh, outstanding. That kind of funnels into some equipment questions we've gotten. And one of the questions was, what mics are recommended for podcasts? Is it usually Shure or Rode? What are the key things to think about with podcast mics? And I think I can start that by saying mics are like, what's your favorite food? Everyone's going to have something a little bit different for different reasons. But I would love to hear, CJ, why don't you kick things off with what do you recommend?
Yeah, so this conversation for me is a fun one because it's always the question, what's the golden mic? For me, it's always, if you're going to take your budget for whatever your mic is, just think about first room treatment. So if you can say you're going to spend $300 on a microphone, you got to at least be spending $300 on your room treatment. I would say, depending on where you're at, if you have a really reflective room, even you can kind of see my home built studio, which isn't the prettiest, but it does sound good. And I have got a lot of, I've gone through and flattened it all, but there's a lot of sound treatment in this room to where I can use, I've got this little, I can even show you this is a Sennheiser MKH50 that I'm using just right out of frame. But since my room is so dead, I can use something that's a little further away. Otherwise, you can look at, like I think the Shure was mentioned in the earlier on. Those are great. You see them everywhere. Those are the staple, thing to where, but you do need to look into the extra gain. So there is another gain stage for that. They call it a cloud lifter, I think it's what it's called. And it gives you an extra set of some more gain for that. Or the Rhodes, and I would say I've heard even $100 microphones sound great in a really nice room. So if I were to do one, if I had $400 to spend on a microphone, I would at least go, $200 on room treatment, maybe a $200 microphone, and then you're working with proximity on how close you are for that voice.
I quite often when Keycode is building out what we call bill of materials for podcasts, I think it's usually the 7B, the Shure 7B. Is that it, if I'm not mistaken? And I think you could even get it with like a boom stand because you don't want to hear rumbling, you don't want to hear yourself hitting the table or other noises, so you want to keep that kind of separate. So that's really affordable. You mentioned Rode. That's a great mic. I've always been a fan of the AKG C414. That's kind of been a staple, but it's also a little bit more expensive. Now, kind of what goes with that is Jim in chat said he noticed that your host, me, is on a lav mic. Is that a backup or are lavs preferred? That's vanity. The reason I've got a lav is because I have all these computers going right now, and if I have a mic here, I have to then maneuver around that. Also, my good mic, my AKG, is actually at my desk back there. So I'm only using a lav because it allows me to emote, allows me to move around. And, if you have a good treated room, as CJ pointed out, and you have a sound engineer that knows what they're doing, you can get a lav to sound pretty darn good. But for this case, it just I didn't need it, and also sometimes it's an aesthetic choice, and having a mic here just wasn't something I needed. So
I was just at
let's
the
move. Go ahead.
podcast movement convention in Dallas a week or two ago, and the thing you mentioned, and I do want to highlight it, is a
Please.
stand that is not acoustically coupled to the desk or whatever you're physically touching, because more audio sins are just by accidentally bumping the table or leaning too far in and hitting the stand. So something that's, like you said, on a boom or decoupled from the stuff that you're touching is pretty critical just for best possible quality and eliminating mistakes that you don't want to capture.
And just like microphones, there's no shortage of different microphone mounting options, whether it's on a stabilizer that attaches to your table or attaches to the floor, or it can swing left and right for different camera angles. There's just no shortage, and of course, that's where we come in. So, Tom, I think another question that I think you could probably answer for us: what live sound mixers support Dolby Atmos, and what streaming platforms support it?
So you put up a graphic during the talk, but the biggest ones in the United States are Audible and Wondery Plus, although they're kind of being merged as part of the Amazon family. So those are heavily engaged with Dolby Atmos. There's several hundred audiobooks, for example, already on Audible, with the Harry Potter series launching later this fall. And There are quite a few global services as well that already have Atmos. In terms of platform adoption, it's that's their news to share when they're ready. We're actively working with several platforms behind the scenes with the technical enablement side as well as the business part of it. But unfortunately, I can't share until those platforms actually light up when it's going to happen. But it's definitely actively in the works with quite a few major platforms. And again, on the consumer playback side, more and more places where people can hear, get an Atmos experience are being propagated. There's over 6.5 billion with a B Atmos capable devices in consumers' hands today. And what I'm most excited about is automotive. I said in the earlier recording, 20 auto OEMs have Dolby Atmos already. I just found out we're up to 25. And so, again, the automotive space is growing rapidly. And so, even though we're still working on the platform enablement side, the consumer playback side is already there. And again, more platforms are coming. So, our advice is, hey, create and stockpile now.
Outstanding. So, quick housekeeping. We've hit time, but we have a lot more questions coming in. So we're going to keep going if you want to stick around. And of course, this will be on demand as well. So this question goes a little bit, I think, a little outside of the bounds of what we discussed today. But I'd love your insight. What are thoughts on getting people to use your studio? If you decide to build a podcast studio, or maybe you're planning to upgrade to a podcast studio, but you want to get the public to use the space. How do you get that out there? How do you inform people of its existence? Is there a Uber for podcast studios? So what tools or techniques do you recommend? Yeah, I thought it might fall a little bit outside of what we were talking about. You're right. The facilities that at least Keycode has deployed, a lot of them are post-production facilities or existing music facilities that already have some kind of infrastructure to handle audio or audio over the network with something like Dante. So it ends up becoming word of mouth. I have yet to see a LinkedIn site for podcast studios. I'm sure there's a site out there catered to YouTubers for finding a podcast studio in your area. But as of right now, it's kind of emerging as a secondary income stream for a lot of businesses. So there hasn't been a kind of clearinghouse to find this, unless I'm mistaken. Has anyone come across anything like that so far?
Yeah, I'd agree. Just for us, we're a part of an agriculture community, and the community is very aware that we have a video studio and an audio studio. So we get asked about that, and right now it's something that we're not really exploring, but it's certainly I would say it's word of mouth. It's just the understanding within this community that we have this nice facility. Not every organization associated with agriculture in the state has things like Kentucky Farm Bureau does. So I think that's probably it. I don't know of anything like that, especially in our world in Kentucky, where you could rent out a space for something like that. I know some universities have nice podcast studios, but again, is that available to the public at that point? So, but yeah, for us, we do get some requests. There was a lot of talk of that when we were building our facility. It's like, is this going to be open to other ag organizations? And maybe someday. But I would agree. It's probably more of a word of mouth thing right now. I'm not really seeing anything like that out there.
And you alluded to it, but traditional post facilities are starting to broaden their scope of services just to be able to work in the podcast space. And so that's another option as well. That's, I think, going to be growing.
Definitely. In fact, I can't name the client, but just this past week, there was a room that was meant for assistant editors, half a dozen editors. And a week ago, they said, you know what, we're going to put them elsewhere. We want to turn this room into a podcast room, and we want it to be modular so different people can come in and rent it. And, there's lights that are installed permanently in the ceiling that can be operated by kind of a touchpad. So it's kind of set it and forget it. And then you bring in your own, shall we say, accoutrements to then decorate the area as you see fit. And that kind of dovetails into a question we get from Randy, which is, can we talk about the type of lighting equipment that's best for video podcasts? So the KFB folks, when you were getting lighting for your studio, what kind of things were you looking for to make sure you had the most flexibility in the space?
Well, currently our podcast is a audio only podcast. We're not lighting or doing video on the podcast side, but for our video studio, we just basically wanted large soft lights, try to attack people or light people with as much soft light as possible while highlighting more, I guess being a little more harsh on the key lights and sort of the backlights, but nice soft light up front. Is what we went with there. And main thing of the installation was getting everything set where we didn't have to move lights really at all. So we could sort of just have different cues set up on our light board and just apply different scenes, have them all programmed in. That was the main task there, was just getting enough lights in position where we weren't getting on a ladder very often and moving them around. So I guess for a podcast setup, I would just do the same thing, especially because you're stationary. You're not really going to be moving around. And you're probably working in a small space, so you don't need a whole lot, but I would just have something pre-programmed in that's ready to go, and you can, fade up that cue.
And that's what we hear as an ask from a majority of our clients, which is, can you set up something that can be controlled, via an iPad or some other portable device and just have presets? So that's really important. So we start looking at newer lights that communicate via Wi-Fi or proprietary protocols. We're also finding that ones that are lightweight, right? So the days of old heavy lights are kind of gone. We now can deal with LED lights, which you can then even mount from the ceiling. We have a lot of clients who have drop ceilings, and they ask, well, how do we put lights in the drop ceiling? And they make little hooks that can hold a couple pounds worth of weight, which is what a lot of these lights are. We also tend to find ones that you can adjust the temperature on. I mean, often you're shooting at 56K or 5600, but some people want it maybe a little cooler, a little warmer. But we also find that no matter where we set up lights, there's always going to be edge cases, or maybe even more than edge cases, where there needs to be some flexibility. And that's when you have to have the tripods. That's where you have to have the sandbag so no one trips over it, because someone will, with lights on there that you then can adjust and dial in. And then lastly, you have to have something to monitor that light, right? You can't just cross your fingers and pray that the lighting's going to be good. You have to have a tap off your camera that's balanced so you can see what the lighting looks like, so you're not just spraying and praying, as we say.
I'm a big fan of the table-mounted ring lights where you can actually see the white circle in your glasses. That's just me. But
that's actually what I was going to bring up, because that's one reason I don't use those. And as someone who has glasses, you get those ring lights right in there. So you have to go with something that's a little bit higher. And then, of course, what everyone always forgets is the backlight. You got to separate yourself from the background, so you pop off the background a little bit. So I've got one other question, and this goes a little bit outside what we discussed, but Tom, I kind of have a feeling where you're a kindred spirit. You like talking speeds and feeds and zeros and ones. So what streaming system are we using? And is it best to use SRT or HLS or something else? What kind of streaming protocols are you normally using for a video podcast?
For a video podcast?
Yes. I mean, that's live, obviously. That's live.
Right.
For example, this portion of the podcast that we're doing,
Mhm.
we're routing everything through a cloud hub. So everyone's streams on the call are going to the cloud, and the cloud is then providing those signals to us. So there are different ways to do that. You can use different software manufacturers. But when we talk about the protocols that the video is in, are you typically using SRT streams or HLS, or what do you recommend?
So I'm an audio specialist. I don't know a lot about video, although I will self-servingly say that Dolby Vision is coming to podcasts as well. We are looking at sending HDR to the homes for podcasts in addition to Dolby Atmos. But for video protocols, perhaps the KFB gentleman might have a bit more expertise with that. I mean, I can talk about audio codecs all day.
Well, I can jump in because codecs
Please, yeah.
and streaming protocols, I kind of have a thing for. So SRT is normally what you want to go with because it's very low latency. HLS is traditionally what we're seeing on the delivery standpoint when you want to have a single cloud instance or whatever your server is, being able to serve up different qualities to different people on different devices. So HLS allows you to send those chunked segments of the video, but in the different formats. So if for some reason you're on your hotspot, like I think Tom is right now, and bandwidth gets constricted, it can dump to a higher quality or a lower quality, but still keep up at the same time that you would expect to see the high res version. So that's typically how we look at things. But normally podcasts are recorded locally or in the cloud from whatever the transmission source is, and then it's reused later. What we're doing right now, obviously, is live, but a lot of podcasts are traditionally done where it's recorded, saved, edited, and then it's put out later after CJ does all his work. So I think we've run out of questions, and of course, everyone has to get back to their daily duties. So unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today's Broadcast to Post episode. If I haven't said it already, a huge thank you, Matt and Austin from the KFB team for joining us, and Tom from Dolby and CJ from Follow Happy for joining us and sharing your insights. It's fantastic. I've made notes on the podcast that I edited so I can go back and research some of the things you talked about. For everyone who's watching the episode, please make sure to follow Keycode Media on your favorite social media channel. And if you're looking to build or upgrade your production studio, Keycode Media delivers the most competitive pricing, plus a free consultation to ensure your workflow is built right the first time. So please count on the trusted team at Keycode Media, and you can book your consultation today at keycodemedia.com. Once again, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Broadcast to Post.
Thanks for watching Broadcast to Post. Please make sure to subscribe to the podcast to receive future episodes. Follow Keycode Media on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram to receive news on additional AV, broadcast, and post-production technology content. See you next time, folks.